Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen and I'm here today with a video called Don't Judge These Books by Their Covers. Or basically I'm going to be talking about books with covers that I don't necessarily love, but stories that I do. So the first one I have on this list is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. And this for me is a very boring, dark cover. I don't care for the font on the title. I don't understand what dominoes have to do with this story, and I just don't think the cover tells you a lot about the story. And so I've never really cared for this cover, but this is one of my all-time favorite books. It is a World War II story that is narrated by death. So the concept alone hooked me, and then the story is so good and tragic, and it's got really great characters that you connect with. My personal favorite is the main character's papa. So yes, while this may not be the prettiest, most appealing cover that also may not tell you a lot about the story, I promise the story is good and you should give it a try. Next on the list is a childhood favorite of mine, and that is Downsiders by Neal Shusterman, which Neal Shusterman I think is most well known for his Scythe series, but this one is a little older and is actually the only Neal Shusterman that I've read. I'm about to read Scythe, I'm very excited for it, but as of right now I've only read Downsiders and it is so good. But I've never loved the cover. I do like how the title is done here. I think this is kind of a unique way to set up a title, and I've always liked that part of it, but the image of the main character, Talon, down in the sewer grates, while it does kind of give an idea of what the story is about, it is about people living under New York City. It's just not the prettiest image. I like the snowflake details, but this is basically just a snapshot of the very opening scene of the book, and I don't know, it's just never been my favorite illustration for a cover. Next I have the Maximum Ride series by James Patterson, which these books have a really fun, cool concept. It is about these teenagers who have been experimented on, and they've all been given bird wings and they can fly, and they have escaped from the place where they were experimented on and they are on the run. So a fast-paced, exciting, interesting concept with just kind of a boring cover. I like the shade of blue, it's very bright, it pops, but it's just an image of a girl who does not have wings, and so I feel like they could have done something way cooler with this concept. I do like the font for the title though, very big, again pops like the blue color. So I like the color and the title font, but I feel like they could have gone with a better, more interesting image. Which, this is a fairly popular series, so by this point I'm sure there are a few different covers for this book, but this is the one I have and I don't love it. Next I have The Two Lilas by Liz Fenton and Lisa Steinke, which again I actually like the colors on this cover. I think they're very pretty. The lights are pretty as well, but this cover just doesn't really translate anything about the book. It's just pretty colors and some lights at the bottom. I mean, maybe you could argue that the two sets of lights kind of represent the two Lila Bennets, but it doesn't tell you anything about the character, that's for sure. So yes, pretty colors, but tells you really nothing about the story at all. So I guess I will have to tell you about the story since the cover doesn't. This story starts out with the main character is cheating on her husband, and the story quickly branches into two different stories. One in which she makes the decision to confess to her husband, and one in which she doesn't. And in one of the stories, she ends up being kidnapped, and it becomes kind of a mystery of who in this alternate timeline has kidnapped her and why. Next, I have Orphan Train by Christina Baker Klein, which in a way, it's kind of cool how it's kind of three-dimensional looking, but overall, I just find this cover kind of boring again. It's not really the prettiest cover on my shelves, but this is another kind of dual story, one in the present day, following a teenage girl who's feeling kind of lost in her life, and she is being told a story from an older woman who's telling the story of her childhood and how she was orphaned in New York and put on a train and sent out to the Midwest, which was common at that time. So an interesting historical novel with just not the most engaging cover, although a little bit unique with kind of the 3D aspect that it has. Next, I have another childhood favorite, and that is Inkart by Cornelia Funk. And I've just never really liked this cover. I get the concept, I get that the story is coming out of the pages into the real world, but it just doesn't look very appealing. I don't care for the artwork personally, but it does definitely kind of translate the concept of the story, which is that our main character's father, when he reads aloud, things come out of the book into the real world. So I will give it points for kind of translating the story. But I will say these covers got better and better as the series went on, which is kind of funny because the series got worse and worse as it went on. But I do really love the cover of the third book. Next, another childhood favorite is Prophecy of the Stones by Flavia Bajor, which is a fairly unknown book. I really loved it as a kid. It was written by a 13-year-old, and it does show sometimes, but I still really enjoy the story. But the cover is kind of plain. It's just the three stones from said prophecy. I have always liked the very bright orange. It's one of the few books on my shelf that are like this really bright orange color. But yeah, there's just not much to this cover. And it doesn't translate a whole lot about the story that the title doesn't already translate. It is a fantasy novel about 3 teen girls who are kind of destined to rescue the land of fairy tale. Next, I have Attachments by Rainbow Rowell, which I actually don't hate this cover. I think how the title is set up is pretty cute. The little illustrations of the chairs are kind of cute in their own way, but it's just kind of a boring color, obviously, not very bright, doesn't really pop on the shelf very much. And so while there are cute elements, this just isn't really my taste. I'm kind of a sucker for the bright, fun colors, and this is pretty subdued. And maybe it makes it seem a little more serious than it is, because this is actually a really fun, funny book, and this cover doesn't have that light feeling that the book has. This one is a fun, funny romance about a guy who works in the IT department for this newspaper in the 90s, and the newspaper has just started monitoring people's emails, and he is given that job of monitoring the emails to make sure that everything is work-related and work-appropriate. These 2 women, their emails start getting flagged, and so he reads them to check and make sure that everything's above board, and he kind of can't decide, like, there's nothing really bad about them, and so he ends up continuing to read them and not turn the girls in, and he ends up sort of falling in love with one of them through her emails to her friend. Next, I have Zeros by Scott Westerfeld, Margot Lanigan, and Deborah Biancotti, which again, I just feel like this is a kind of boring cover. There's just not much to it, not much going on here. Again, doesn't really translate much about the story to me. This is a story about some teenagers with very unique superpowers. And yeah, this is just kind of a boring cover that just looks like some cracked concrete. Not sure why that decision was made. None of their powers involves like any sort of like an earthquake situation. The big zero with the line through it on the cover to me is not adding anything here. So yeah, this is for me one of the most boring ones that I feel like there could have been a lot more done with this cover. And finally, I have Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Niven, which I love this book so much. It is such a cute romance, again, kind of right in my wheelhouse as far as contemporary YA goes. But again, this is a cover that just doesn't translate anything about the story at all. I don't understand why there's a marble on the cover. As far as I remember, there's nothing to do with marbles in this book, much like Inkart with the dominoes. I don't get the connection. It's kind of a boring cover again, just some dots on a white background. And again, I feel like more could have been done with this. I feel like it could have been a lot cuter, and like I said, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I don't know if the dots are kind of supposed to bring Earth to mind, like you're holding up the universe, Earth. I don't know. I don't get it. So yeah, these were some books with maybe some not so beautiful covers, or covers that maybe don't make a whole lot of sense, but that the stories are still really high quality, and so even if the cover is not the most attractive, I think you should give these a chance. I hope you enjoyed watching, and now onto the quote for today's video, which for this one I have a short one from Harry Potter, and it is said by Hagrid. And it goes, "What's coming will come, and we'll meet it when it does." Thanks for watching. Remember, words matter.